our, our gray New York City buildings, what that is. Okay. Hey, before we get rolling aggressively, anybody have questions or things to share with everybody before we get further on in our agenda? No? Okay. A quick reminder, we are not going to have the meeting tomorrow that's listed on the agenda. Bob, if you could remind Merrick to send out a notice, text, and email about that, please. We'll reschedule that shortly. The second thing is, of course, is Tempe is coming up quickly. Tempe, if you don't know, is Phoenix metro area, very close to the airport. So, well, what is it, about a 10-minute Uber from the airport, Master Moody?
Oh yeah, 10 minutes. That's about it.
Yeah, yeah. So very, very convenient in and out right on the ASU campus. So if you have not confirmed with Bob, do so. If you haven't booked your plane tickets and your hotel, do so. We're certainly in one of those periods of time that probably would have been better to book your plane tickets when announced than wait for gas prices to jump. But hopefully everybody will be there. I believe it'll be very valuable. Our topic we've been on the last couple of weeks, which really evolved from several of us. I don't know what that was, but anyway, really evolved from several of us digging deeply into the statistics for a number of schools. Is we've been on the topic of student retention, and clearly, as as COVID came in, we spent an inordinate amount of time of, gifts to give students, ways to hold their hand, things to do while teaching remote to make sure that there weren't any gaps in their attendance. But now we're back into more normal territory here, and what we are finding is back into the territory of people can come to class regularly, they can attend in the school. We're not doing all of those things. What we're certainly finding is that the problem has been that we're seeing a lot of schools that are running 7, 8, 10, even 11 or 12% a month dropout rate, attrition rate. And what we know is that a doable target is between 1 and 2% a month dropout rate. And what we also know is that, and maybe put it on a scale here, Master Smith, I think you were giving anybody who has a 1 or 2% a month dropout rate an A, and if you're below 1%, you're like a A plus plus plus, whatever that might be. But a 3 to 4% dropout rate is probably a B and a C operation. A 7% dropout rate is now in the D and F category, and anything above 7% is clearly in an F category. In our industry, I kind of frequently speak of the not too charitably of the bozo explosion. You'll hear a lot running around the industry of people saying, well, no matter what, everybody's going to lose 7%. You can't even get better than 7%. You'll hear conversation like that, and conversation like that is, number one, is defeatist, and number two, is just inaccurate. And the difference between having a dropout rate of 4% a month and having a dropout rate of 2% a month literally is the same as doubling the number of enrollments you're doing per month, right? So again, I mean, we're beating a dead horse again this week from last week, but it's such an important topic and such an important thing to get on top of. So let's think about it. With 300 active, losing 2% a month means you only need 6 a month to stay even. Losing 4% a month means you need 12 a month to stay even. So if you were doing 12 enrollments a month at 300 active, if you had 7% a month dropout rate, well, you'd be losing 21 people. So again, said differently, at 300 active, 7% you need 21 students to stay even. At 4%, you need 12 students a month to stay even. And at 2%, you need six students a month to stay even. And obviously at 1%, you'd only need 3 a month to stay even. And honestly, for all of our efforts to get everybody to be focused on Facebook marketing, LinkedIn marketing, Google marketing, search and pay-per-click, to be focused on external events and so forth, really the easiest thing you can do, and the way that you can get your operation to run the most smoothly, is to get to that magic 300 active count plus or minus, but to get your dropout rate down to the 1 or 2% number, right? And if you think about it, at 1 or 2% a month dropout rate, you can have a couple of internal events a month. You can do some family add-ons. There's a number of things that you can do that aren't very time intensive and are very inexpensive, that are going to keep that replacement going. Now, even when we've gotten schools to that point, I always recommend you keep that marketing Parthenon going. One reason for that is you maintain your touch with scout troops, with Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, with elementary schools, with daycares, with all those different organizations. Number two, you stay in the habit of being good at tracking down and getting good public relations. In other words, articles in the newspapers, TV coverage, etc. But imagine what an easy operation it is. If you have 300 active students, you only need 3 a month to stay even, and you're spending your time working on getting that student value up, rather than having to be a hamster on a wheel, constantly chasing new students to fill the ones that you had. And the worst case scenario is always that example I used from Tim and Dave Kovar years ago, is, the feeding the beast feeling. You have, let's say, 500 students, and you need to have 35 or 40 every month to stay even. And unfortunately, we always see these success stories touted of so and so in South Carolina has 1,000 students, or so and so somewhere has 500 students. But when you look under the covers of the ones that aren't in this group of ours, oftentimes there are people who are needing 50 or 100 students a month just to stay even. And oftentimes they're in a situation, I told it in that Everything I Wish I Knew When I Was 22 book, that I wrote 20 years ago. And the story, the chapter's called Bigger Isn't Always Better. And it was about Greg Silva. And Greg Silva was touting that he had 1,000 active students, but his monthly gross was in reality 35, 40,000 a month. He was working 364 days a year. His day to do most of his renewals was Thanksgiving Day and Thanksgiving weekend. Never assume that those stories look as good behind the scenes. What we're seeing with many of you guys now is $80,000 a month school, netting $40,000, $50,000 a month, working really aggressively on number one, having the Parthenon going. So you've got all the community outreach, but you've got the marketing things and so forth, and you're keeping your marketing budget where it should be. But number two is you're able to pay quality staff a high amount of money and trim down the number of people you need. So again, that's number two on this. Is one of the big problems I see for dropout rates is having a whole bunch of part-timers running around, but not having good, highly qualified, highly compensated full-timers who are incentivized and held their feet to the flames on keeping track of everybody, not letting anybody fall through the cracks, incentivized for making sure the testing numbers are where they need to be. And again, that's another number we haven't talked about in a while, but I want to know, if I'm testing every 2 months and I've got 250 people who are supposed to be testing, it's an important number to know. Did I have 250 people test, or did I have 180 people test? If I am anywhere off of what the number should be, well, that's a very leading indicator, and sometimes I guess lagging indicator, but it's a leading indicator of a greater renewal problem and a greater attrition problem. Does that make sense? So, Matt Smith, that's the number we used to back when we were doing it the complicated way, a test every month, and before rotating curriculum and everything. We kept track of that number like a hawk because as things were complicated, it was harder and harder to keep track of people. But when things are easy, you should be keeping track of that number like a hawk because, again, if everybody under black belt is testing every 2 months or every 3 months, then it should be, in fact, everyone under black belt is testing. And there shouldn't be a 10% spread or 15 or 20% spread between those who are scheduled to test and those who actually show up to test, who actually get their lessons in on time or whatever it might be.
And to make sure we're comparing apples with apples, just to clarify, so everybody is operating under the same rules. Remember, to count them as an active student, they have to have been in your school the last 30 days. And that means if you're using the 3-card box system, all the cards at the end of the week that are in box 2, those are the ones that have been to class that week. Even the ones that are in box 1, which means they haven't been to class this week, they still count as active. In the office, we have week 1, week 2, week 3, and then week 4 or more. Even week 1, 2, and 3 that they're absent still counts as an active student. But it's your red flag to get them back in before they end up in week 4 or more, because once they get into week 4 or more, they haven't been there, then they no longer count as an active student. And a couple, I'm such a stickler on statistics that a couple of the ones that you have to be very cautious of and look how your year is going. So you're comparing each month and then do your quarterly numbers to see how they stack up. And that would be to track your net enrollment. So January, February, and March, what was your net enrollment each month? And remember, the net enrollment is how many students signed up that month minus how many dropped out that month. The remainder is your net enrollment. And to find that number, it's no more complicated than to take how many students you had at the beginning of the month, add how many enrollments you had during the month, and then count how many active you have the first of the following month. So March 1st, if I had 200, in March I had 20 enrollments. Then April 1st, I should have 220 students if I didn't lose anybody. If I only have 205, then that tells me my net enrollment that month was 5, because I'm 5 more than I had the month before. Everybody understand? So make sure you're tracking that. And then I would be very cautious of looking at each of my months. And if I had January, February, and March, and let's say they were numbers like a 5 net enrollment or a 10 or a 15 or whatever it was each month, I would add those 3 together, those 3 net numbers, divide it by the 3, and that would tell me what my average net enrollment is each month based on the first quarter of this year, so I could project how many new students I could have by the end of the year if I keep that same number. Of course, if it's not a good number, we can change it. We can get 1, more enrollments, 2, we can have less dropouts. That makes the net number go higher. And remember, if we're going to hit that magic number 300, then I want everybody to take how many active students you have now, subtract that from 300, whatever that number is, take your average net enrollment this year so far, January, February, and March, divide that in to that number, and that will tell you how many months you're going to need to accomplish that many more new enrollments.
Yeah.
Does that all make sense to everybody? Any questions on how to calculate that?
Yeah, and Master Smith, we harp on the numbers so much because it's the old, I think it was Peter Drucker's, what gets measured gets done motto. But really, to me, what the most important thing is if I'm using the A side, B side box method, and then I'm pulling them at the end of the week, so I have my 1 week, 2 week, 3 week inactive. If I'm having all of my staff go through that several times a week, in other words, go through each individual card, paying really close attention to that, and then I'm going through everybody who didn't, who should have come in Monday and Tuesday who didn't, and by Tuesday or Wednesday I'm getting hold of them to schedule a makeup class, and which means I've got all the cards on the A side that are marked, Monday, Wednesday class.
And that's a big point, Master Oliver, that a lot of the schools, I think, forget to put that on their cards. So every attendance card should have the 2 days that they're coming. So when you go through the cards Monday night or Tuesday in the day, you can see who should have been there yesterday or who should have been there on Monday, and you see their card is still in box 1, they didn't show. So I can go ahead and call them and schedule a makeup class. I don't have to wait a whole week.
Yeah. But what I want to do today is spend time on ways to have a higher level of student engagement, ways to have students feel more recognized. And let's start with, again, simple premise, but I believe it's right, is spending time on hyper, XMA, whatever the current flavor of the month is, doing, adding all kinds of curriculum in year 2, 3, 4. Although it's not worthless, as it really doesn't solve the problem that you're trying to solve. And again, as I've looked over the years at schools, it was the schools that had super high energy floor and all kinds of cool, new, exciting curriculum. They tended to have 7 to 10% a month dropout rate. And the schools who had just two things. One is super nice people with super high level of engagement and rapport with the students, combined with really doing a good job of helping the students set the goal to black belt and beyond. We're the ones that had lifetime student involvement that really were turning students into lifelong participants. And
Oliver, I would say it a little differently, because I would make sure it's not the high energy classes that are causing the dropouts. It's the personal, when we're spotlighting people and, you're giving them that, that recognition in the class, and you're developing that rapport with each of the students. And what it actually means is we found schools that didn't have an exciting curriculum that had as good a retention or better than some of the ones that had a high energy class, because the ones that were having high energy class never took the time to personalize their instruction, to give their students positive feedback, to do progress checks and things like that. They were just all wrapped up in what their curriculum, and I'm going to just teach it my way, rather than reaching each student individually and developing that rapport between each one. That, to me, is the most common denominator in good retention.
Right. Well, said it differently, and this may be an area where you and I disagree a little bit, Master Smith. Said it differently, the schools with oftentimes the highest talent instructors, who are showing off the most, who are moving people through the highest level of athletic talent, especially in the first year, are missing the point of what it takes to keep a student. Because what it takes to keep a student is for them to feel loved, engaged in warmth, to be recognized, to be felt important to have for everybody to know their name, to use their name, to physically touch them, to be engaged with them. Those are really the things that make the biggest difference. And I think what we do is we get fixated as martial artists on things that matter least and start to ignore the things that matter the most, right?
And I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah.
Personal attention.
Yeah, yeah. And so we get fixated on the things that matter least and start to ignore the things that matter most. And the things that matter most are staff training systems, assistant teachers, SWAT team, whatever you want to call it, leadership training systems that teaches each and everybody who's in a leadership position to go greet every parent, every class, to go introduce themselves to all the white belts, to learn all the names and use them. And over the years we've had simple but effective cute little systems, things like everybody gets greeted within 3 foot of the front door, everybody's names gets used 3 times in every class, every parent gets their name used 3 times every class, every student gets physically touched appropriately, of course, every class. And you kind of have to start with that. Is if we start with the third intro after they're enrolled, you confirmed it, you put it on the calendar, you greeted them at the front door. Perhaps you had the folder conference that day, so you walked them through the folder. You explained the ID card, walked them out to the box to explain how that's working, reintroduced them to the head instructor, meaning you don't assume the student knows everybody's name, because they probably know nobody's name, even though they've heard it 2 or 3 times. And then you walk them into the classroom, make sure they feel comfortable. You keep an eye on them. If they look like they're uncomfortable or confused, you help them with that. But then you do that. Every class is a white belt. And frankly, you do it every class for everybody. It's just that, the amount of maintenance that a red belt needs is dramatically lower than the amount of maintenance a white belt needs, right? But the training has to do with making sure that everybody on staff, not just the program director, but everybody on staff is responsible for touching, greeting, talking with, meeting, introducing themselves repetitiously. Hi, Billy. Great to see you again. And there's a lot of people you're trying to remember. Again, I'm Mr. Jones, and I'll be helping teach the class today. If you have any questions at all, let me know. Let's make sure. So come over here. Let's remember we bow at the floor here. We do this, and just explaining, then re-explaining, then re-explaining, and holding their hand. To me, that's the early part of what's essential for that building relationship.
And connecting every parent that's sitting in that classroom, connecting them with their kid. So I can look at that parent and know exactly which child is theirs. And I always made it a point and I told my instructors, if the parent shows enough interest to sit there for the class and not just drop them off, then I want you to make sure that you give their kids some extra attention. Make sure that you're spotlighting them. Make sure that you're giving them some positive attention, because those parents that are there will see that and they'll pick up on that. Now, that doesn't mean we're ignoring the ones whose parents aren't there. We're still going to do that, but I'm going to definitely never miss one of the parents who've been sitting there and I ignore their kid for the whole class. That's not establishing that rapport. And we even use analogies during the class. A kid does something real good, and we might say something to the parent, and let's give the parent a big hand, because behind every one of our successful character stripe students is a parent who's helping them with it.
Yeah, and just I might add as a snarky comment is you don't want parents on the side, you want parents in uniform on the floor. So to the extent the parents are on the floor in uniform, that changes the dropout dynamic dramatically as well. It's again one of the things I see gets missed a lot of times is making sure the parents are involved in the first intro, second intro, and then enrolling the parents with the child. Because again, that makes, I've tracked the numbers on that. That makes a huge difference in the dropout rate. A 7-year-old training by themselves versus a 7-year-old training with mom makes a huge difference. A brother, sister, but with mom and dad also in the class makes a huge difference. So you really want to get good at that. But let's get some ideas here. From a standpoint of really maintaining high touch, I hear all the time among our members, and it's important to keep, showing them off. Oftentimes in these meetings, we hear that somebody wants to cancel and they said this, and how do I deal with it? But I'd much prefer to hear, what you did for the new baby that happened, what you did for the grandmas in the hospital, how did you reach out and recognize high achievement? What are some special touches? I've told the Buzz story, Durkin story of, teenage kid comes in, he just got a new Mustang, and Buzz goes and gets a gift certificate for the car wash and a gift certificate for the gas station, and gives it to him next time he comes in, just as a pat on the back for having his first car, that type of thing, or having a bunch of school coffee mugs at the local florist, and anytime there's new baby, grandma in the hospital, dad's in the hospital, some little service delivery problem, that they're getting flowers from a local florist and a coffee mug from the school or something like that. Who's got some good stories of some things that you guys have done recently to help build that relationship and help build the rapport with the students?
I got one for you, sir.
Go ahead.
We had in a MISU call a couple months ago, we found out that mom had fell on the ice, hurt herself pretty bad concussion and stuff, and it's why the kid was missing. They couldn't, she couldn't drive him there, and my mom actually works the front desk, and she keeps like Hallmark in business. She has a whole box full of all kinds of cards.
Good.
And we all report to her when we find something out. There's always sticky notes at our desk here. So and so said something. So we sent the mom cards, some flowers, sent her some stuff. She comes in when they come back, and she says to us that we were the only people in her entire life that reached out to her while she was hurt. No one else, none of her family, nobody else, not her employer. We were the only ones. And that was one of those invaluable sort of touches with that. And we find out all the time that the cards they get, most people don't get mail, and they don't get like happy cards.
Yeah.
We've even had our vision boards have sometimes come in with the cards cut up, all of the good job notes.
Yeah.
They'll actually take the good job. We're shocked. Like they actually read them, because we sit here, we print out a mailing label for every student, and we make sure within 2 months we've gone through them all. So everyone gets a good job note.
Good.
And they actually, you see them taped all onto there. Look at all the good job notes I got.
And
definitely great connections with all that.
Say something about that good job note that you send, with the label, because I guarantee you half of our members aren't doing that, if not even more than that. Explain to them what you do with that.
You print out a mailing label for the entire school. So every student gets a mailing label. End of the night, it's just a rule, part of the system. We sit down and everybody fills out a couple of them. And you just go through the mailing labels and you look to see, all right, who was here tonight? Yeah, so-and-so was here tonight. We peel them off. And the goal is to get the sheets empty. We're about 350 students. So the goal is within about 2 months or so to get the sheets empty, usually between testings. And then once the sheet's empty, you print it out again.
That right there is one of the golden nuggets right there that will help your retention tremendously. The other card, when something's wrong, there's been somebody's ill or hurt themselves or accidents or things like that. That's a very important one. But those little things like that for an awesome job done, those are the kind of positive reinforcement that's the rapport that we're talking about that you need to establish. And nothing is better, because I guarantee you people slip through the crack unless you do exactly what you did, is print out a label for everybody. And then once all the labels are gone, we start it all over again. So that way nobody gets missed. Great job.
Yeah. But the first one is I think extremely important too. Now, so let's walk through that. Is one of the things you said, Paul, is you have a box full of a whole bunch of different Hallmark cards on the front desk, right? You have your mom on the phone doing a lot of the inbound and outbound, and she's making good notes. And notice the pieces here. She's making good notes on what specifically is going on in people's lives, and then is empowered to, hand address a note, send a note card, put a live stamp on, and send a card out, right? And just the act of hand addressing, putting a live stamp, and hand addressing a card, as you said, is very, very, very unusual nowadays, right? And it's, again, everybody make a note, highlight it, double star, one thing or another. Sending somebody a sympathy email is worthless, right? You want it to be a personal hand address card. And so,
I'm sorry to interrupt, sir. It's not only worthless, but it's almost insulting.
It's almost
yeah. Yeah, especially if it's anything that's automated. They get the happy birthday card, they get the we missed you in class this week note, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's less than personal.
Yeah.
They get that from their the clothing manufacturer that they subscribe to.
Yeah. We have accounts with Chase Manhattan and with Wells Fargo, and I get the happy birthday emails like, okay, great, you programmed into the algorithm. It doesn't exactly
I'd rather just unsubscribe from those so I don't have an email to deal with, right? I mean, that's what you're going to be thought of as.
Exactly.
And one more on that too, sir. It's
Go ahead, Paul.
part of our recap at the end of the night. What'd you guys hear today?
Yeah.
Is, just instructors on the mat, kid walks past and is like, oh yeah, my dad's home because of a surgery, or he got in a car accident, because they tell us everything. So part of our recap is to make those notes of it.
Mhm.
And then we all make sure we get that down in writing, so we can get something out to everybody.
Yeah, good. And but I want to make sure everybody gets every little piece of the system, right? Which is just so important there, Paul. And you're doing it right. One is that everyone on staff is empowered to be listening to, asking about, and taking action on, and or at least sharing at the end of the night those things that are coming up, so that you can recognize. And then you decide, is this something we send a get well card? Is this something we send flowers? Is this something we send cookies? Is this something we send some other gift? Whatever it might be. And by the way, I think you've really got to make a note to yourself is don't be cheap on this stuff, right? Is if you've got a student, I mean, just put it in dollars and cents terms, who's paying you $300, $400, $500 a month, and you spent $100 once a quarter on sending them flowers or sending them cookies or something like that. The level of goodwill that, again, in just pure brutal dollars and cents terms, the level of goodwill you're buying with that far exceeds the actual cost of what it is. And it's amazing the amount of goodwill you buy by handwriting a card and doing that. Paul, I want to point out another thing about your system that's crucial, is I want everybody to note that he said they're printing out labels for every student in the school. And by the way, if you're putting those labels on when you mail them, I would just print it out on plain paper and hand address it, just as a thought. But he's printing out labels and then going through everybody that has a label and then starting over. If you don't do that, so let's say that I say to all of my instructors, each of you are responsible for sending 2 good work cards a day, or you're responsible for sending 5 cards a day, without printing out the labels and going through, what'll happen is the instructors will cycle through the top 20% and ignore the bottom 80%. Everybody really anchor that in. And it's just personal confirmation bias. But I see that all the time. It's why I don't like student of the month type things, right? I love if you get recognized if you get 10 stripes. I hate the instructors are having a popularity contest to see which student we like the best, and we're going to put their picture up on the wall, right? You everybody see the difference? But what you're saying, Paul, is the right thing, is you're cycling through to make sure, and it goes back to like the 1 minute manager of catching them doing something right. You can catch anybody on a good day. So you catch them on a good day and you send them a card for a good job for what they did that day. And now you're not just recognizing, and again, if you ABC or ABCD your students, the instructors have a tendency, and it's a natural human, it's not it's understandable, but they have a tendency to, all of their time and effort is spent on the A's and the A pluses, and they tend to have a complete blind spot for the C's. So the ones that are most likely to drop out in the near term are the ones that they lose focus on. I've always said in a different way, when you're spending time with communicating with students in the school, that you have the bottom 5% that are never going to be happy about anything you do, and you have the top 20 or 25% who love everything you do. And those are the two categories that during the evening you shouldn't be spending any time with, right? You should be spending all your time on the ones who are, they're okay, but we can get them to be A students. They're a C student, and if we don't really handhold them, they're going to end up in the D category and drop out. That should be where all of our time and energy is spent, right? But what happens is the A students put themselves in your face because they just love you and love being there. The F students, who are never going to be happy about anything, kind of force themselves on your time and attention. And it's the great middle group that deserves the time and attention if you're going to improve revenue, improve retention, improve renewals, and everything else. So, Paul, that point about the labels is, I think, one that can't get past very quickly, right? Is you're ensuring that everybody is going to cycle through. And Master Moody, I think a cat or something just jumped over your.
Yeah, a cat just did. Yes, thanks for
some black
yeah.
streak.
I don't like this. That's non-fuzzy. I don't use what name she has for this thing. Yeah, yeah.
Very entertaining. Anyway.
Yeah.
But
we're lucky that the thing doesn't do it very frequently. It's just I don't like this thing.
I don't know. Animals and kids add entertainment and lightheartedness. So maybe it's a value to all of us.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more though. And for everybody, if I could add something, I mean, we systematize especially the first 6 classes, so that the first 6 classes, they get a welcome card, they get at their next class a great work card. So in that first 6 class time frame, there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the mail. So they always get pieces in that time. But you're right, sir, that needs to be part of it forever. Even if they're second degree black belts, they get a great work card. I mean, if they're been with me a long time, they'll still get great work cards through that system. And Paul, we have a similar system. We have just a checklist of all the students that, every month, everybody has to get at least one great work card. They're either going to get great work cards or they're going to get attendance cards, we miss you cards because they missed class. Mm-hmm. It's one of those two things. They're going to get something in the mail.
Yeah.
That list we print every Thursday night, so they get a physical. The system goes with people we haven't seen for a week, and we print that address label every Thursday night, and we hand write a note to them, usually now talking about their black belt goals.
Yeah.
Try to dig into the file.
Yeah, but if everybody can anchor in the other thing we just said, and I don't know if that was emphasized enough, emailed great birthday cards, if you have an anniversary of them being there, or great work cards, emailed stuff like that is almost an insult. Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't email them a photo of their kid in class. We do that sometimes, take a picture of their kid in class and email them. And I just want to send you an email at work telling you how great your kid did in class last night and whatever, and then text them a little text saying, hey, I just sent you an email. Make sure you check it out of a photo of your kid in class. Something special like that. You can use email for things. But it really is almost like an insult to send somebody these automated emails that your CRM system uses. And it's that question we get asked all the time, Master Oliver, that, what CRM should we use? It's like, whatever, use whichever one you want, but don't abdicate some of these responsibilities to your CRM, even though they have this promise. And we're not anti-CRM, but or anti whatever system you're using at all. Just be careful of what you're using it for and when you're using it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as you're going through all of this, And again, hand addressing the envelope and putting a live stamp on it sounds trivial, but it's an important component to that. Because again, you go back to kind of that A pile, B pile type of mail. But even the label kind of implies that a computer was telling you to do this rather than a human being was thinking about it. And so who's got some other, that Paul, anything to add to that? But everybody be thinking about some other things to add to that. Who's got some other recent recognition things that you've done that would be beneficial for everybody?
For the MIA stuff, sir, sometimes we'll take a video in class, like the whole class will just do a video and everybody yells that they miss them, get well soon, that kind of stuff. And we'll send that. We'll text that to them.
That's nice.
Yeah. Hey, and Paul, I'll go back to your first example. Did something happen in order to get the kid to class while mom was unable to drive back and forth?
He actually wound up going on Zoom, because we still had that as an option for the couple weeks till mom was cleared. And then there was a dad that just happened to travel a lot. Mm-hmm. But again, we found that information because we were active on the missing in action list. We were on it right away. Yeah.
And see, one of the things that I've always focused on with white belts, and if you go, when we went to an elementary school, and it's maybe where it dawned on me the first time, is when we went to an elementary school and we enrolled 20, 25, 30 people all from the same elementary school. Then what happened naturally is now you had a group of white belts who all went to the same elementary school, and typically we're all within a few blocks of each other in a neighborhood because of the way the districts carve out. And all of a sudden what I found was, this mom is carpooling these 3 kids. This mom is sick and she's picking up the other 2 kids. This dad is picking up somebody who needs that. And it helped retention. Now, there's a downside is you got to be careful that, you end up with parents who are never coming to the class. But with stuff like that, the more you're introducing the students to each other in the white belt class, the more if I know this child goes to this elementary school and is in 3rd grade, I make sure that this other child who's in the same elementary school, maybe in 4th grade, that they meet each other. But the more I do that, right at the beginning of introducing them each other, finding out who each one is, getting the parents to exchange phone numbers, getting the kids bonded, I get 2 things that happen. One is I get a child who doesn't want to miss class because he doesn't want to miss seeing his friends that he's now made in the school. And we all know the problem with having a birthday party for, say, brown belts is the only people who show up are other students who are already enrolled in the school, because their friend circle tends to be, at that point, everybody in the school. Well, the quicker you can create that dynamic. So if I can aggressively work on that dynamic at white belt, I'm much better off. And anytime there's, mom sick, grandmother's in town, one thing or another, I help facilitate transportation. I connect them up with people. I do all that kind of stuff. Is one, it eliminates them not being in class, and 2 is they really, really appreciate it. And number 3 is they're afraid not to be in class because they don't want to miss. Mom doesn't want to miss seeing her friends. Dad doesn't want to miss seeing other people there. The kid doesn't want to miss seeing his friends. So the more of that you can do, but that's good. And so, Stephen, what else would you add to your comments there?
That was just it, sir. Actually, the only comment I would have is I reminded myself too, we haven't done it in a little something we do that we're not doing often enough. Like every time, like I think I liked a lot what Paul said about everybody every night saying, what did you hear today? And like briefing each other on the MIAs and everything. Yeah. So we can be more proactive on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that piece of it is essential. Is 2 things that Paul says systemically that are essential is having the end of the night meeting, getting the numbers up to date, and sharing every conversation that happened, right? And a lot of times it's, a part-time instructor will say, oh, by the way, Billy's not going to be here for a week because, mom's having surgery, something like that. And they don't even think of it as something anybody should know other than, he's going to be falling behind in the test. But all the full-timers should know to have that feeler out, to be knowing what's going on. that's something that merits. Mom gets flowers when she gets home from the hospital, that type of thing. Think about coming up. I mean, we have coming up Mother's Day, right? Is certainly every mom getting a personal note, a note card from the school would be a wonderful thing and would stick out. In many cases, you have a bunch of them, so it becomes a little bit of a project. But I can tell you, there are suppliers. Our supplier, Handy Mail, Cassie, I think, is our contact. I've shared that in the group a number of times. They can do fake hand addressed note card, fake hand addressed internally. So you could set up a Mother's Day card with the logo or the picture of the staff or something like that, and send them a list, and then they can send it out, put a live stamp on it, and it looks personal. Send out cards is another source that can do stuff like that. That would certainly be worthwhile for every mom in the school to get a Happy Mother's Day card that at least looks like it's handwritten. And one of our schools used to always go buy flowers, and every mom that walked in the door got flowers on Mother's Day. And they did that for the week. So, little touches like that are extremely valuable. Who else has some great examples?
If anybody doesn't have any, I have some things that I think everybody should do every month to help with your retention at the school. And whenever we do things at the school, I always like to make them multidimensional. In other words, every month I'm going to have a social event at the school. It could be a movie night, a parents' night out, a Halloween party, a Christmas holiday party, a New Year's party, Valentine's party, whatever the excuse is, right? But it's some kind of social event. And because I want it multidimensional, it's a chance for our students to develop friendships. So we do karate games and we do things where they team up and they get to know each other. Because what I found is when a kid is alienated at the school, in other words, he doesn't have developed friendships at the school, that people will leave activities, but they usually don't leave their friends. When they develop friendships, they tend to communicate better. So I always try to help that communication by doing things that where they get to socialize and get to know each other, especially the advanced students with the beginner students. So now they're and when we have an event like that, it always happens that people will meet each other from the same school and go, oh, I didn't know you were taking karate, because they're in an intermediate, maybe they were in a basic, but it develops that friendships from your social activities. But because I like to make them multidimensional, I also make it a buddy event. So that way, our buddies, we have potential for new students. Our basic students that are coming is getting them prepped and pre-framed for the renewals. The ones that are already renewed, it's helping their retention because they're making more friendships and are, and especially with the instructors, they get to be, on a different level that day because it's a social activity. So that's one of the things that I do every single month. And it has to be that multidimensional purpose. And then the second one is every month I'm going to do a technical event. And that's something that our leadership students are training in, whether it's board breaking or nunchuck or bow staff or anything. Those are what I call technical or training special seminars. And again, it's a multi-purpose that it gets them excited. We usually will do it when, let's say in this cycle, we're doing a bow staff. And when I do the social event, I'll do the next weapon that they're going to do. So they get kind of introduced to the next weapon that's going to be happening in the next block. I also make it a big point for the basic students that if you get in leadership, this is what you're going to be working on next month in that leadership training. And this is a kind of a head start on it to show you. So it gives those basic students a chance to see all these exciting things that the leadership students get to do. And again, we make it a buddy event. So now we have a potential for new students. We have a potential for renewals from the basic students getting excited. And then because we're teaching new things to our leadership students, they're staying excited about constantly learning and developing new skills. So those are kind of the things that I want to do every single month. And again, the success or failure of it depends on how well you promote it. You know, do you know how to do the sign-up sheets? Do you know how to put signs around the school? Do you know how to announce at every class? Do you know how to talk to people individually and ask them if they're coming? Have somebody at the door with the sign-up sheet to catch them on the way out, find out who they're bringing, those kind of things. Because when you have an event and you don't engage the students or their friends involved in it, then you're kind of spinning your wheels. We want to catch as many as we can. So we got to get real good at marketing those activities. I always like to play them up real big in the class and explain what they're doing. If it's a movie night on something, maybe a Karate Kid movie or something, I'm going to make a big deal about it. And it's just important that you know how to promote a successful internal event. No different than we have to learn how to market outside the school and know how to market on the internet. Well, we have to know how to market internally successfully, where we're actually getting them to bring friends that, and I'm going to tell you, it's much easier to get the friends enrolled than a live event that they've never had any experience with anybody in the school.
Yeah, and let's stay on topic here.
I thought that was on topic.
Well, now you're veering into referrals.
That's part of the monthly activity.
No, yeah, I understand, but the one problem you have with the live events is the live events tend to be attended by the top 20%, ignored by the bottom 50%.
Not at my school, and that's strictly on marketing.
Yes. So the problem that schools have is that the top 20% will come to everything you do. The bottom 50% come to little or nothing, right? And from a standpoint of getting the bottom 20% to show up, that has to be personal, not promotional, right, Master Smith?
That's true.
So,
absolutely.
So what we do with live events is what we tend to do is there's a big poster and there's a sign and we announce it every class and maybe we send postcards to everybody. But what gets the bottom half to show up is I sit down and I talk to Mom about what it is, why Billy will enjoy it. I put my hand on Billy's shoulder, tell him we really want to have him be there. Here's why it's going to be fun. Here's why it's going to be beneficial. I confirm that it's in their calendar. I confirm that they're going to do it. So again, what happens in the schools tends to be what I would typify as one-to-many communication. I send everybody an email. I send them all a postcard. I send them all a text. I announce it to the class. Now, everybody here knows that if you announce for a month and a half every class that you're closed on Saturday for X, Y, and Z reason, you're still going to have the 10 people who show up who are mad that didn't know the class was closed, even though there's a sign right on the front door, right? And we know that that's the syndrome. But then we think, I'm going to announce this event every class and everybody's going to be so excited. Well, yeah, your top 20% will be super excited, but they're the ones that are showing up to everything. And your bottom 20% aren't going to even pay any attention to it. And the bottom 50% are unlikely to participate. And
Well,
Master,
that's why the sign up sheet, you'll know exactly where you stand. And then you can start talking to more people individually. And if you don't fill up your sheet, then of course you're not going to have a good turnout. But it's up to you to have something visible so you know exactly where you stand with how many are going to be there to make it successful.
Just a quick question
Go ahead.
on regards to the sign-up sheet. We normally just do everything digitally. Do you like a hard sign-up sheet where they
Oh,
sign up?
absolutely, positively, right by the card box. And it has their name, their friend's name, and the date and the time. And then when they sign up, I give them one of the permission slips to give their friend to get it filled out, to email it or text it back to us as soon as possible. And that way we can call and verify it with the parent. And a lot of times get them in for one of their free 2-week classes before the event even happens. But yeah, without a sign-up sheet, physical sign-up sheet. Now, yeah, you can have it, you can computerize one too, but having it right on the desk so I'm filling it out as they're walking in and out. I have one of my assistants or trainees that are over there, or one of my paid instructors over there talking to people at the beginning, at the end, when they're coming in or going out. It's all part of having a good sign up, a good group.
And and I told you this, Master Smith, a little while ago, but we had a buddy event a little over a month ago, and we had a total of 52 students. So half of them were current students, the other half were brand new students, right? And we only got like 3 people to sign up for intro lessons. And that's because, of course, at the door, we're getting them to fill out waivers. We're trying to get them to sign up or whatever. We're doing a buddy event again this Saturday, but the difference is we told everybody in class, in order for your buddy to come, it's free, they have to come to an intro lesson, because the last intro was really big. Some of the kids didn't know where to go. They're brand new to the school. Some of them were a little bit intimidated. So now we're just going to have them come to an intro lesson so they can see the class, get a private or semi-private lesson, and they'll have a better idea of what to expect for that. And thus far, our buddy event is, again, this Saturday. We have like 5 students left. Again, we've got 26 and 26. Most of those students have already come in for their intro lessons, and they've signed up for their, next class. And we're having them earn their white belt on the buddy night. So we still have like 6 more students to get this week. But the point is, most of those that come in early, done the intro lesson, got them signed up, they're happy, and they're excited to earn their white belt on the buddy night. So that's huge difference from last time.
yes. Okay, so let's go back to student retention. Is the reason Master Smith was talking about student activities in the school is the more social engagements they have that are tied to your school, the more they're going to feel like this is that they're surrounded by friends, it's something they're going to miss out on, the more hesitant they're going to be to drop out, right? So it's a component. To me, it's one of those 80-20 rule things. Is almost all of your efforts really should be devoted to white belts. If I have really built relationship and I've gotten a new white belt to come to whatever the Buddy Day event was this month, I've gotten them to bring 2 or 3 friends to their belt graduation when they get their gold belt, their yellow belt, whatever. If I've gotten them to schedule their birthday party, maybe I've had a pizza party, the parents both know every one of the staff and like them. The kid knows every one of the staff and likes them. Everybody is recognizing them when they walk in the door. And then I've walked them through the steps for the child and the family to really set a goal to be a black belt and beyond, and make this a lifetime commitment. The amount of maintenance that you have to have on a green belt that's renewed into leadership, a blue belt that's renewed into leadership, is fairly minor if I do it right at white belt. But if I don't do it right at white belt, and again, listen to, make sure you're doing all the steps. Everybody who enrolls, you're taking a picture with the kid and the parents. that picture is being used like flashcards so that all of your instructors, all of your part-timers, everybody knows mom's name, dad's name, the grandparents' names, and the grandparents are there regularly, the kid's name. They know to greet them at the door. They know to utilize their name every class. And not only do they know the name, but they have a little checklist that they know. Here's what dad does for a living. Here's what mom does for a living. Here's the school that this child attends. Here's the other sports activities they're involved with. They're involved with this soccer league. They're involved with this baseball league. They go to after school care at this place. They see all of that stuff you should know at the enrollment or within the first few classes. And the more that you know about the student, and again, we could get into referrals, the more referral opportunities you find that there are tied to them. But also, the more conversations you have with them. You know, Billy, how's soccer going? When's it over? Oh, it's done on May 15th. Okay, fantastic. What do you like about that a lot? What are your challenges with that? What can we help with to get a little bit more coordination going? See, the more you know about the parents, where they work, what groups they're involved with, you know, do you know the parents are, you know, they're living in Denver in this case, but they're from Chicago. They've been here for 6 months. So you're asking them, you know, well, you know, winter's a lot different in Denver than it is in Chicago, isn't it? What do you know, how are you thinking about the differences in the two places? See, the more conversations I'm having with people about interesting facts about them is people are always excited to talk about themselves, right? Well, we have a tendency to do in the martial arts schools, and by the way, everybody look around the room, black belts tend to be rather egocentric. And they tend to like to hear their own voice. And so what happens when people walk into their martial arts school is they tend to get black belts talking about themselves, black belts talking about martial arts, black belts talking about technical curriculum. But what endears them to you is you know about them, you know some history, you know their wants, their dislikes, what they're struggling with, you know where they moved from, what their goals are, you know about dad's job, you know about mom's job, you know about other activities that the child is in, and you're asking about them and you're reminding them and you're focusing on them. Does that make sense? And the more places that you put gifting opportunities, the better off you are. Paul started the conversation with talking about mom slipped on ice, and there was a conversation about how the child is going to stay up with lessons, but there's also a get well card that goes in the mail. And with every one of those things, you want to be thinking about, you know, we have a whole bunch of cards on the desk that go out. We have awesome job cards or great job cards, that type of thing that go out. But we also have, you know, an account at Pro Flowers or 1-800-Flowers or whatever. We have an account at Mrs. Fields or Harry and David's or something. And for more significant things, I mean, imagine if the parents, you know, were celebrating their 10-year wedding anniversary and they got a big fruit bouquet from you. Well, who else sent them something? Probably nobody, right? You know, maybe the kids said something. Probably the kids didn't. The more of those type of things you can do, the better off you are. And you know, from my perspective, you know, figure out how to spend, you know, $100, a couple $100 a year on each student for something like that, because it'll go a long way, right? But the more touches they're getting, the better. But the more unique and unexpected touches they're getting, also the better. One of the things that we used to do was we did you know, the computer would print out a congratulations letter, and I would sit down and sign, you know, 1,000 at once or something like that. They were all hand signed. They weren't pre-printed. But we would send a letter every belt cycle. Well, I found out two things. Number one, the kids kept those and treasured them, so it was worth doing. But number two is by the second or third belt, it was expected So the level of impact was started to get minimized, right? But then what happens is they didn't expect. Mom got the Goodwill card. They got the flowers at the hospital when the new baby was being born. Grandma got flowers at the hospital after she slipped on the ice. Those are the things that nobody else does and they didn't expect that really make a lifelong impression. Is that making sense? Anybody have any questions on that or anything to add?
So something we did. So for our basic class, we give students the book that I wrote, the Leo's Notes, which is it's a thick book. That same week, our leadership students, what I just did was I bought a whole bunch of worry stones, which they're not that expensive. They're pretty cool. They're really smooth. And so then we teach the kids how to sit down and meditate and use that to calm down. And then we tell them, before you go to bed, I want you to use this worry stone. Take some deep breathing, use your worry stone. Each of you get a different color. It's very special. It's your own stone. And these things are a couple bucks.
Sure.
And now the kids are going home and using that and sleeping, and falling asleep faster or whatever. And then the parents are realizing, wow, this is from martial arts. So we just did that for a retention piece. Wasn't that expensive, and kids are loving it so far.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of mindfulness training at the end of the day is great. And of course, that's one of the big problems with kids and teenagers anymore is, they're sitting at home doing, they're on TikTok or on Snapchat at 11 o'clock at night and worrying about what everybody else is saying about them.
That's the kind of rapport we're talking about. That's what you've got to develop, that connection where you can't fool the people. You've got to really be concerned and take a personal interest in your students. We are a people business. And the more, and I always mess the saying up, Master Oliver, the more you care about other people, the more they care about you, what you think or whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, and the a great way to think about it is the Steve Covey description of the emotional bank account. Are you making deposits or are you making withdrawals? And the more deposits you can make, the better off you are. And it's all these little touches. It's everything from, like in my case, I read a lot. So I always remembered whatever parent, wandered in under their arm. Because it was just something that was easy for me to do. So if it was something I read, I could talk to them about the subject. If it was something that I hadn't read and probably would never have read, I could ask them, why they like Danielle Steele and what's good about that author and what, is this the first one they've read or is it, have they read the series? And somebody was telling me X was good, which, I don't know. But you get the idea. Just things that you remember, right? And by the way, if a parent always walks in casual and they walk in a suit and tie or in a formal dress, having a conversation about it and noticing, right? If they just got a haircut or they just got a new car, everybody when they have a new car or a new motorcycle loves somebody to fawn all over it. We forget those things a lot of times, right? I remember having a student pull up on his new Harley. And I also remember being pissed off because that was supposed to be my cash deal on the renewal. But at the same time, we had the entire staff out there fawning over the bike and, talking about how great it was and one thing or another. You've got to make sure that that's just built into what happens. And again, I want to emphasize as many times as possible, what will naturally happen as you start doing that is your staff will do all the right things for the top 20% of the students. And they'll ignore the bottom 50%. So you've got to have all kinds of listening mechanisms and all kinds of systems like Paul's print out everybody's label to keep the bottom 50% from falling through the cracks, right? We all know that, you have people that from the minute you enroll them that they're going to be a third-degree black belt and probably be a staff member because they're just that gung-ho. But we also know that most of the people we touch are not the ones that all of your staff are going to be giving attention to all the time because they're not the ones that are showing how enthusiastic they are. They're not the ones that are showing how eager they are. They're the ones that are timid, shy. They're perhaps introverts, and they need somebody to help them really get adjusted and get to know everybody and feel super comfortable before you make that transition with them. Questions or thoughts on this topic? No? if it were me, I would put to get down 10 or 15 action steps. Certainly one action step is what Master Smith is saying, is anytime you have an excuse for a party, anytime you have an excuse for a student event, is it serves dual purposes, is it's an event where you can get all the white belts there and get them to get to know everybody. And by the way, I would always make sure I have name tags, and I would recognize all the new students, and I would introduce them to all of the senior students and introduce them to all the people who are going to be fixtures around the school when they come to those things. And number two, we know that just by promoting it, announcing it, doing one-to-many marketing, you're not going to get them to show up. You've got to make sure that when they enroll, you explain to them what's coming up and why it's valuable for them and why they will enjoy it. You've got to put the hand on the shoulder and make eye contact and explain it to them. You've got to do all those pieces for them to get there and get engaged. The other piece of it is I would have this ongoing and forever, but I would get all my staff together and say, look, I was watching the last white belt class, and we had five assistants on the floor, and Joey went and introduced himself to all the people he didn't know. Nobody else did. And by the way, high five, Joey. Here's a dinner on me. Here's $50. Right? Is catch them doing something right. But then it gives you the opportunity to spend 30 minutes on here's what we want to do. Is every meeting we're going to go through flashcards, make sure we know the names. Then we're going to assume they don't know our names, and everyone in the white belt class, every time, we're going to go introduce ourselves again to all the moms and dads and to the kids. And by the way, for them to avoid looking neurotic, they say, hey, Billy, I know that I introduced myself before, but you're learning a lot of names. If you remember, my name is Mr. Jones, and I'll be helping out with your class today. So, you've got to teach your staff how not to look neurotic. But you want to teach your staff that everybody in a leadership role introduces themselves, uses the student's name, uses the parent's name, and makes every effort to greet everybody within 3 foot of the door, and makes every effort to touch everybody appropriately 3 times every class, right? So you want to have each of those pieces just ingrained. And then you have to watch the classes. You have to watch and say, did a student who's been, who enrolled 4 days ago come in and nobody talked to him? Did only the head instructor talk to him, or did everybody talk to him? Did we walk them back over to the ID card box when they were looking a little concerned and walk them through all that process? Did we walk them through the systems again? And again, Master Moody talks a lot about the rules and regulation sheets and one thing or another. All of that is great, as long as I have personally one-on-one taught them each and everything that they're supposed to be doing. And then I've taught them again each and everything they're supposed to be doing. And then I've taught them again each and everything that they're supposed to be doing. Because I know that in the second lesson, third lesson, fourth lesson, that they're uncomfortable, they're confused, the kids thinking, I really like that instructor, I can't remember her name, is feeling embarrassed about not remembering her name or not remembering his name. All of those things we've got to recognize is just part of what goes with it, right? So, hence, scheduling their third class, scheduling their fourth class, scheduling their fifth class, confirming it, having it in schedule once for it to confirm, calling and confirm, greeting them at the door, confirming that they know what all the systems are every time. And if you just build that into your routine, it becomes a natural habit. The next action step is make sure that the staff, that nobody leaves before we get a little recap at the end of the day. And anything that we should know about. Mom slipped on the ice, grandmother's in the hospital, Billy's going to be gone for a week because he's got a treatment of some sort. They're going to be gone because they're visiting grandmothers, whatever it might be. All of that conversation happens. But that somebody is empowered to, when that conversation happens, send off a personal card, send off flowers, send off cookies, something, so that that's just in the routine, that it's happening every day. So every day, a couple of people are getting get well cards. Somebody's getting flowers at the hospital. Somebody's getting cookies. That's just something that's a routine every day. It's part of what we do at the end of the night, is we go through that. The other thing is what Paul was saying is have the labels of everybody and have a set number. But if you cycle through every testing cycle, that's a pretty good pace. So if I have 350 active students, there's his labels. If I have 350 active students and I have 20 class days a month, so I've got to cycle through 350 people in 40 days, let's say, I've got to get more or less 8 or 9 a day out, right? So, you just get into that habit and you put systems in place to make sure that you don't recognize the top 20% every other week and you ignore the bottom 50% totally, right? And if anything, I don't really care about making sure all that stuff happens for the top 20%. I care a lot about making sure that's happening to the bottom 50%. Is that making sense to everybody? And again, I don't mean to be so pedantic about it, but when we have some of these conversations, I immediately see some schools, they go out and they create the student of the month. And now it's a popularity contest among the staff. And in 12 months, I end up with one person a month, so 12 people got recognized. I don't want to ever use systems like that. What I want to always have is, here's the threshold for achievement, and you get a trophy. Here's the threshold for achievement, and you get a medal. Here are the things that we're going to do to keep on top of things. And then I want to recognize the top 20% who are in your face need the least support. The bottom 5% who are already pissed off about something just need to be fired. And it's the bottom 50% minus those 5% that need all of your time and attention to make sure you move them up into those next levels. Matt Smith, what would you add to that before we call it a day here?
I think you covered everything pretty good, Master Oliver.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one more thing.
Yeah.
So we just started doing that recently where, at the end of the day, we go through numbers, right? We always do that now. But now we started adding, of the instructors, who was a bad student in class today, or who acted out, or who had a hard time. And then we talk about, okay, when's the next class they're coming to? What are we going to do to help that kid? So with a couple kids saying, okay, next class, we're going to pull them aside after class and role play what to do. So we got some kids that are on the spectrum that just call out, they just use the, so then we're going to pull them out after class and then role play and practice with them of how to use their indoor voice, right? And how to do that. We got a couple of other kids that, are acting out as brothers. And so we said, okay, so Instructor Alex, you're going to go next class and talk to those boys and say, okay, so we're working on black belt focus. I'm going to call on both of you. I want you to show the class how you can have good black belt focus. So we're kind of letting them know we're going to call on you to do something well. We want to spotlight you for this. So be prepared for that, right? And so just everyday numbers, and then which students are struggling, and then how are we going to help them the next time they're in. And we've just been doing that in the last month or so, and it's huge difference. The kids are doing a lot better in the classes.
That's
Excellent.
a great idea. You should make sure you have them recite, make sure that they know you're going to ask them, what are the 4 laws of concentration? Because
sir.
when they can quote that off, and then you kind of do this, with the fingers, the kids get it right away with that visual.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so a reminder, we're not meeting tomorrow. We will reschedule that the week of the live event in Tempe. We won't have our normal meetings. Hopefully everybody will be there with us in Phoenix. Again, Tempe is Phoenix. It's right by the Phoenix airport. We're going to be on Friday, Saturday, and then we have the Millionaire Crew on Sunday for brunch. So make sure you're good on that. Matt Smith, anything I'm missing?
No, I think if everybody can, of all the things we talked about, your red flag that you need to look for is, what is that net enrollment, and how many months is it going to take me based on what my average net enrollment has been the first quarter of this year? How many months is it going to take me to be at that 300 number? And it doesn't matter whether you're at 200 now, whether you're at 150 now. You need to know how many months projected based on your quarter. Now, when we have the second quarter, we can reevaluate those numbers, because if our net enrollment was low, then we've got to make sure we get it up, because see, with just 10 net enrollments a month, that means you can add 120 new students to your school in a year. And for most of our schools, that'll make them a 300 student school. So make sure that you stay, really keep your eye on the ball on that net enrollments. And if you have any trouble figuring that out and you didn't quite get it, then just watch this recording replay, get the replay of it, because we explained it. And if you hear it, maybe you have to play it back a couple times to catch exactly what I was saying, but I think you'll get it. If not, then just bring that question up the next meeting, or even put it in our Facebook as a question.
Yeah, well, there's a great cartoon graphic I posted on our business page, but it basically has somebody standing at a chalkboard and it's charting out all of their marketing steps and follow-up systems and one thing or another, and has like 80 different steps on it, and then it's labeled our new customer acquisition systems, and then it says our client retention systems, and it says like 2 things. And really, it's much more valuable, and you should be willing to spend more money on keeping a student than on trying to always get a new one, right? And again, the healthiest school is one that has a huge number of active black belts, that is promising benefits that they're really delivering, because students are there for 3 years, 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, as opposed to dropping out in 3 or 4 or 5 months. So really, every day, it's easy to spend time every day focusing on marketing, and you should. But the most important piece is, how do I keep every student, and how do I make sure that every new enrollment that I do is going to turn into a black belt, and make sure I get them committed to black belt and hold their hand so that they really get started off smoothly.
And
Okay. On that note, Master Smith, let's call it a day.
one last pearl of wisdom that I want to give everybody, that I think will have a major impact on the retention, is that you can either do it with every student in leadership, or every student that you're in your instructor training program, is you assign them a little brother or a little sister. And that's somebody that's about their same age, that's in the basic class, that they're going to share contact information with, that person can help them and answer questions for them, and maybe give them a little instruction here and there. But they'll keep tabs, and that person is responsible for making sure that your little brother is coming to class twice a week. And if he's not, then you're going to call your little brother and find out what's going on, and see if you can set up a time to help him, to get him back on track. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
On that note, we'll call it a day. Thanks, guys.